What's the best way to desensitize yourself from higher stakes games and look at the chips as units, not money?
It's a great question. You've identified a really important aspect of playing poker at higher stakes. Funnily enough, it's the kind of thing that gets better with practice. However, it can get worse over time, which is what I experienced because I went from, playing nosebleed stakes games online before I'd even spent any money in the real world. And so part of this is being young, but part of it is, not having spent any money and like all of my friends not playing massive stakes and not having a lot of money. I was never scared to lose it all at the beginning because, it wasn't that long ago that I had no money and I was perfectly happy and all of my friends with no money are perfectly happy. And so like it didn't, and it wasn't impacting my quality of life yet. Like the fact that I had a lot of money at that point, like the only difference, this is like when I'm 21, 22, the only difference in my life, besides poker to a few years prior, is that like I would not think twice about ordering food at night. Otherwise my life was entirely the same. So before you have kind of before you start spending real money, I think it's kind of easy to be desensitized to it, and treat it as just kind of units in a game that you're trying to grow. Then after, fast forward to now, and I have a house and a wife and a son and expenses in the real world. It actually takes, in some ways, more effort, even though I have played so much high stakes poker that I'm somewhat desensitized to it. But still, if I'm playing big enough and I'm not being responsible enough with my bankroll decisions to the point where I'm playing something that's going to have an actual impact on, my net worth and potentially my quality of life, or like an impact on what I can do in the next year or two, it can get kind of scary. And I think the one way to work on it is to just have experience and practice it. Another way is when you find yourself in spots that feel scary, stopping before you make the kind of instinctive or intuitive play, which might be driven by emotion, and say, okay, am I feeling that I shouldn't bet here because I'm scared or because I don't think it's the right play? And then you decide, hopefully you have that talk with yourself and you can figure out what you think the actual right play is. The third way and the best way is actually to make sure that you're playing reasonable stakes compared to your bankroll. And I've talked about this in a previous video, but essentially it can be tempting to play bigger if you think you can beat the game, because then your hourly's higher and from there you can earn this much and then move up again and so on and so forth. But what ends up happening in reality is, in the real world, there's a lot of variance. And also in the real world, the higher you play, the tougher the competition generally is. And especially if it's getting into a point where you're a little bit uncomfortable, the worse you're going to play. And not only are you going to play worse on your A game and your B game, but your C game and your D game are going to be much, much worse. And you're going to be hitting those more often because you're going to have a bad session. It's going to really impact you emotionally. And it's going to be harder to play at your best. And so what ends up happening is, in theory, in a perfect world, you have more expected value in that higher game. But in practice, you're playing worse. And then you go on a downswing, you're miserable rather than just like, kind of annoyed if you're going on a downswing at lower stakes. And then potentially you play a lot worse, or potentially you take a lot of time off because you can't handle it emotionally. And now you're missing out on some of that like expected value that in your theoretically perfect world you were getting. So really the best thing to do is to move down. If you're feeling yourself be really uncomfortable with those stakes, it probably means you're playing with too high a percentage of your bankroll. And the right percentage of your bankroll to play with is different for everybody because it depends on your life goals. It depends on your expenses. It depends on what games are available to you and your win rate in each of those games. And then it depends on how emotionally fragile you get at certain stakes. And some people can handle, some people to their detriment can handle a ton of risk. But some people can handle like what you would call an appropriate amount of risk if you were to do like a bunch of math, like Kelly criteria, and figure out exactly like what you should be gambling with at a certain win rate. But others, you can do all that math and figure out what you theoretically should be playing with, but it's still too high for you because you're just not like emotionally able to handle it well. And again, like it's not even just about having those bad days and then losing EV because you're playing badly or quitting. It's also about your quality of life throughout all of this. I mean, you're going to be playing poker. Presumably, if you're asking this, you're playing, semi-professionally or something, or professionally, or maybe aspiring to be one of those. So you're going to be playing a lot of poker, and if it's a really stressful experience for you, and a third of the time you're on a downswing that's really upsetting for you, you're just going to be an unhappy person, a third of the time or more, and that's going to have an impact on a lot more than your bottom line and your bankroll. It's going to impact everybody around you, and it's going to impact you. So ask yourself, what's actually important? Why are you actually playing in the first place? And I think you'll find that if you're playing in a way that you're not enjoying and it's actually making you unhappy, you're not working towards your goals properly.